Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Inside the Mirror. Today I have an incredibly special guest, somebody that I've known since I was 13 years old. He coached me a little bit in junior high football, Fort Collins, Colorado. Mr. Marc Neal. Marc, thanks for your time, brother.
Oh, thank you for having me. Appreciate
Absolutely. Now give us a little bit of history, just kind of background on who you are, what you do. Who are you?
Well, let's see. I'll go back to the beginning. I grew up, born and raised in San Francisco, California, in the pretty much the 70s and 80s. I got into law enforcement coming out of college. I tried to get in San Francisco. I wanted to go back and work as a San Francisco police officer, and that's probably the best thing that never happened.
Really?
Yeah, it was definitely. With my understanding of law enforcement and what I believe is important in law enforcement, I don't know that agency would have been the correct fit for me. So
fair enough.
But anyway, moved to Colorado and Fort Collins in 1992 to raise our family, which is how I ended up being the superior football coach that I was for 1 year.
Amazing.
And I got into policing in 1992, working in the jail in the sheriff's office. And my big movement in getting into law enforcement was that I just didn't like bullies. I didn't like people who bullied other people. My dad, late in life, got into law enforcement in California. He actually was a San Francisco Police Reserve, and he worked in the Department of Corrections out there. And so he wanted me to get into corrections, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to work more on the street with the community. I didn't want to, work in a long-term custodial situation. But I got, with the county sheriffs, worked in the jail for a few years. I ended up working for the city for 17 years, so 20 years in law enforcement in Fort Collins. During my time there, I was a trainer of new officers. I was on tactical teams, so SWAT team member, did explosive breaching on the SWAT team, so did some really fun stuff there. Became a trainer, a national trainer, so I've trained nationally and even internationally advanced police tactics, SWAT tactics, since about 2005. So I continue to do that now through my own company. I retired from policing, but I do that now through my own company, Onyx Training. So I still do the advanced police training. I also, as a Fort Collins officer, got into teaching diversity and cross-cultural communication in anti-bias policing. So I also provide that training through my company now. So I've got, like, in law enforcement, those are the exact opposites just about, right?
Sure. So
you got the SWAT, the high tactics, and you got the touchy-feely communication stuff, right? And so it's I'm on both ends of the spectrum. And so my big thing was always like, how do you incorporate those? How do they mesh and integrate together, right? Like, because they're all components of policing. The tactics plus how you interact with people.
Sure.
And that's always been one of my big things, which has kind of led me to develop my style of teaching, is that I saw the teaching of tactics, but I saw a lack of teaching, well, for lack of a better term, the basic humanity that's required of a police officer, right? And so I was always like, how do I bring that kind of character training development, that developing your, what I call the cornerstones of policing, character, integrity, and accountability. So how do you reinforce that needs to be incorporated in how police do their job? Because we focus a lot on the how of the training, like how to prepare an officer, but we don't do a lot of the why. And that's my big thing, is why are we doing this? Why are you taking this action? You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
And so that's always been a part of my training, which I think is from being around trainers and being around training for the last 20 something years, almost 30 now, is that's a very underdeveloped portion of police training.
Mm-hmm.
is the developing the humanity side, that the human capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just kind of how I've gotten with it and just really developed that. And now with, a lot of the incidents going on, I've just become a very vocal proponent of kind of a transformation in policing, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think, man, what a time, like what an amazing time for you to have built up so much history as a leader in not just the community, but in the policing community. And I think what you said there, I think that's super key. And even as just a civilian, as somebody that wants to be a better human, understanding the why of what we do anything, I think is a very basic but incredibly powerful thing. Is why do we do what we do? Why do I behave in certain ways? Yeah. And I love that you said the humanity of it, the personal development as a human being, because police officers are human beings, right? So to think that they don't need any personal development, it just doesn't make any sense, right? Yeah. So when it comes to obviously the current situation, it is a very tense time for a lot of people, and people are drawing very clear lines of you're either with us or you're against us. We either love the police or we want to burn them all down. And I think there's a lot of for lack of a better word, immaturity and possibly just ignorance, and a lot of overinflated emotions versus logic and actual tactics, because I like to use that word with you. Tactics on what do we do, how do we become better, instead of just pointing fingers at each other and yelling and screaming. So you can kind of take from there. Where are we at and where do we go? What do we do?
Well, here's the thing, and I really need to be trademarking these things because I know people are going to take them from me because they're so good.
You want the royalties? Anyway,
yeah, I want the royalties. But here's my analogy. I'm big on analogies. I love to use analogies for things. So first thing, in law enforcement, we have the sheepdogs. There's this term that was coined a few decades ago by a trainer, a guy, and he calls it's the sheep. So the law enforcement, the police officers are sheepdogs. You got the sheepdogs, the sheep, and the wolves. So the sheepdogs are law enforcement. The sheep are the community. Not that they're sheepish and timid, but they're the flock, right? Like you got to take care of the flock. And the wolves are the predators, the criminals, the people who would steal and harm people, the flock, right? Kill the flock. And so what's happened is that the sheepdogs, in order to do a better job of keeping the wolves away, and this is my analogy, have separated themselves from the flock, right? They move away from the sheep. So they aren't there every day. The sheep don't know, they don't recognize the sheepdogs anymore. They don't know who they are. So the wolves, though, the wolves continue to come in amongst the sheep. They sneak in, but the sheepdogs are doing a pretty good job keeping most of the wolves away, right? But they're away doing that. And what happens is they start to think like a wolf, because I want to beat the wolf at their own game, so I got to start thinking like the wolf. Well, that takes them down a wrong road. But what's happening is the wolves, some are sneaking into the flock, but they aren't just running amok, right? They're picking out the weakest members. So other sheep see them, and they're not doing anything. And they're just like, oh, who are you? Oh, I'm the wolf. But they're not a danger, right? But the sheepdogs see them, and they come flying into the flock, and they get the wolf, and the sheep are like, what are you doing? Well, I'm getting a wolf. Well, he's not a problem. You see a different perspective. And then, so now the sheep are looking at the sheepdogs like, man, you just coming in here messing people up, right? So now you've got the sheep, one or so will take off and start kind of wandering around, and a sheepdog will come up and nip their heels to try to get them back in the group. Correction, right? But what do the sheep think? Who are you? Why are you nipping at my heels? We've lost that relationship, right? Somebody will let you correct them if you have a relationship. But if I don't know you, it's that whole thing. You don't know me. You're not my parent, right? It's that we have to reestablish that relationship. And, but like you said, and this is exactly what's going on, everybody just wants to point the fingers and defend their position with everybody. So it's like, and, it's this, such a tribal situation, right? Where it's, you're either exactly with us or against us. There is no in between, right?
Right.
And that's where I have, I have a lot of kickback sometimes from law enforcement, is because I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle of the road. I'm like, don't mess up. And, in the public's over here, they all want to say, either the public's wrong or the police are wrong. And I'm like, no, we're all wrong. And, one of my big things is, I say, what we have going on right now, specifically, is it's a castle siege mentality. And by that, I mean that you have the police are in the castle. They've got the castle all boarded up. They're protecting the castle, they think, right? But they didn't realize that the people are all out of the castle. And now they're coming trying to get back in. But the police are seeing it as a siege, right? We're under attack. Police are under attack. The community is attacking us, and it's a war on police, right? But what's really happening is the public is merely saying, let us in. Let us in. We're stuck out here. We want protection, right? But so my thing is, you got to lower the drawbridge so that you guys can communicate, because you can't tell. They aren't attacking the castle. They're just trying to get back in. And I think that's where we are, right? That's where we are, is that we're not listening to each other. When you hear the call, defund the police, so many police officers I see, they're like, oh yeah, well, what are they going to do when the police aren't around? And I'm like, that's not what they're saying, man. That's not what they're saying.
Listening is so key.
Yeah.
And I've run into that just as a regular person. Obviously, none of us can hide from what's going on. This is a very, very public event. Not just specific event, but what's happening is very public. Social media, the internet has made communications. We're all interlinked. And like you said, it's to this point now where it's us versus them versus us. Take a side. You hear defund the police. You interpret that a certain way. It may be meant in a different way, right? It's like the statement Black Lives Matter, and people push back. Well, all lives matter. And again, we're going. We understand that, but here, listen for a minute what we're saying. And I think that's where the defund the police thing is people go, well, we can't just get rid of all the cops, then it'll be anarchy. And if you would listen, you got to listen and understand what the people are saying. And I think, from my opinion, everybody, both sides, cop, civilian, black, white, Asian, I don't care. We have to listen better, because in order to understand, you must first listen before you can take any actions, So for you, tactical strategies on how police can continue to start that conversation, or begin to start it, as you say, we may need to lower the drawbridge and begin the conversations and ease off a little, where you're not all under attack. And as us as people have to realize, we're also not all under attack, right? This tribalistic mentality is not helpful to actual unity and progression towards a solution, right?
No, it's detrimental. It's absolutely detrimental. Some of the things that I talk about with law enforcement is, I say, you know what, you have to think about how you're trying to defend yourself, defend your positions, not physically, but just defend your positions, right? And realize that can all be put back on you from the public. So when police officers are saying, we're extensively trained, but we're human, so we're going to make mistakes, I go, okay, let's talk about that. You're the professionals, you're extensively trained. And they talk about, well, you never know, a police officer is hyper vigilant because we are come under attack recently. Come under attack, really? All right. But I say, and they say, and so, we're fearful that anybody could be a threat to us. And I go, okay, great, let's go with that. So the public who sees from, let's go back to, the civil rights movement era. What did they see? They saw police officers abusing people. They saw police officers arresting people, who then were later found dead, killed by hate groups, right? But they were taken by police officers and then given to the hate group. So, and then now moving up into here, they see a police officer in uniform literally squashing the life out of a person. They see police officers shooting people with their hands up in the air, lying down on the ground, in handcuffs, whatever, yelling at people, beating people, doing all kinds of things like that. And so, but the public doesn't get to be wary, fearful, hypervigilant. And the officers think, well, because I wouldn't do that. Well, I know. But the public's thinking the same thing. I would never assault a police officer. So why are you treating me like that? It's again, because we don't have relationships, right? We don't know each other. And so it's like, as long as we're going to do that, you know, I try to talk to officers. I say, first off, you got to suspend that. First off, you can't say you're scared. I'm sorry, you just don't get that. You're prepared, you're professional, you're trained, you're knowledgeable. If you get to be scared, so does the citizen who has no training, who has no comprehension, who has maybe intoxicated, maybe under influence of drugs, may have mental health issues, right? You want that person to be more calm, collected, more critical thinking than you. How do we expect that, right? And so I think for me, I try to tell police officers, suspend the judgment or the beliefs that you're right, that you're absolutely correct in this. Just suspend that for a moment. You are, but just suspend that. And so when you enter into that conversation, that interaction with somebody, you're not right. You're trying to learn, like you said, right? Listen to learn. Seek first to understand. And so and I go, that's not a big, you know, that's not some big, you know, crazy, you know, martial arts, mixed martial arts tactic. It's just simple humanity, right?
It's basic humanity.
So that's my first thing. As I go, let's keep it simple. Let's just listen and hear it's going to be uncomfortable, and the person might get mad, but that's okay. I had a trainer, an instructor, when I first started say, remember, it's always business. It's never personal. And, you know, that's something that stayed with me for 30 years. You have to know that. You have to remember that if somebody's yelling at you, it's not personal. They don't know you.
Don't know you.
It's based on what you represent, right? And maybe a frustration they have with that representation. And so you have to go, all right, it's business. What's my goal here? Why am I here? What's to get a relationship going? I felt the role of policing is to build relationships. That's the role of policing. Between the community and law enforcement, community and the laws, and the community. And I think that one of the big things that the police have forgotten is that first and foremost, they're community members. Right? So we see it as two groups.
Right.
Right? Like Frankie Goes to Hollywood, when two tribes go to war, right? So that's my day, right?
I love it.
But you know, but that's the thing, right? And so now you say a war on police, warriors, a war on drugs, whatever. So what have you created? Us and them.
Right.
Us and them. And once you do that, you're at war. Right?
Right.
I can't have any quarter. I give no quarter.
Right.
And it's a defense. We're not at war.
Right.
It's one group, right?
Right.
But we don't see that.
Right. And how do then at that point, how do, I would say, obviously there's two questions within this question, I guess. How do when it comes to something as defund the police, which again is more of a restructuring statement than a eradicating statement.
Yes.
What does that look like, or what do you envision that looking like if it was to go the perfect way that you would be able to restructure?
Yep. So here's the deal. It's not getting rid of police, but here's what I said. And I saw this on a news show. An officer who I know, he was on a national news show, and he was asked the question, what about the training? how do you feel about law enforcement training? And this was in light of the Atlanta shooting of Brooks, Rayshard Brooks. And I thought, perfect opportunity. And he said, oh no, police training is the best it's ever been, or this, and then there was also a chief from Miami on there, and he echoed that. And he said, yeah, it's a thought. And I'm like, you guys lost. I said, you blew the perfect chance, because saying that, what does the public see?
We do
They're
no
like,
wrong.
wow, this is the best training you can do. This is the best your training can be. And this stuff is happening almost weekly. And I thought to myself, because here's my thought, and here's shared by a nucleus of people who I know, is that it's not about the point being is we have the opportunity. This is a fantastic period. This is a great opportunity. And I say I would love to be able to get back into policing at this time, because I think it is such a great position. But what we need to do, law enforcement, over the years, they've been given way too many tasks. And we start to confuse a lot of training in different things, or a little bit of training in a lot of different things, with good training, effective training, adequate training. And so now, right, you say, okay, police officers, you got to handle mental health issues. Why? Oh, but here's your 10 hours of training. Okay, you do realize that people have doctorates. They have doctoral degrees to deal with people with mental health issues. But you want police officers to be effective with 10 hours a year training? How does that make sense?
It doesn't.
You set people up for failure. But what does law enforcement do? Law enforcement says, yeah, that's fine. We got this. And then they're shooting, people having mental health episodes, running through neighborhoods. They're just shooting them, killing them. California, Walnut Creek, because they're carrying a pole. Well, they never threatened anybody with the pole. It's just that the officers run out of ways to solve the problem. Well, all right, I'll say that I was afraid he was going to hurt somebody with the pole, so I'll just shoot him. Okay? But how does that solve the problem, right?
Right.
And so that's my thing, is that we're at the point now where we can, like I say, we can get some of this stuff taken off our plate, right?
Right.
If we admit that we have too much on our plate, right?
Sure.
But if we don't say, we're overwhelmed. The public sees that law enforcement's overwhelmed. They're seeing it in the activities. They're seeing it in action. But law enforcement can you say, no, we're fine. We got this. And the public's like, they've been doing it for a lot of years. They went, okay, if you say so, we'll give that to you. And they go, we're going to increase training here, here, and here. And the public's been like, all right, sounds good. But it hasn't changed anything. And so my thing is we're at a perfect spot to now integrate a more integrative, collaborative community policing model, right?
Okay.
Where, and some agencies are doing this. Don't get me wrong. There are agencies that are out there doing this, but I'm talking about profession-wide. Profession-wide. Increase mental health professionals into policing, incorporate them into the police agency itself, so that if you have a mental health call, mental health professional goes, right?
Sure.
And the officer goes there as a backup, as protection, as safety.
Sure.
The officer is not the primary. That mental health professional is one. This can do a couple things. One, it's going to let mental health professionals see the people in their natural environment. That'll help them diagnose better what this person's experiencing, right?
Right.
Secondly, that's going to be better for the officers, because they'll have that interaction modeled for them, how to interact with somebody who's having an acute mental health episode, right? Rather than just go, get on the ground, lie down,
Almost in
right?
and in the field training, if you will. Observe it. Observance is a type of training, right? Observing is part of training.
Exactly. and they'll learn to develop the ability to interact with somebody that's not, it's because police officers a lot of times, and especially this generation in the last 10 years or so, they're very much black and white.
Mhm.
So I'm a police officer. If I go there, there must have been a crime committed. I got called there and I'm a police officer. So there must have been a crime committed. So let me try to figure out how this fits in the world of criminal activity. It may not. You know what I'm saying?
Of
It may
course.
not.
Could be
But
anything,
they're
right?
gonna, it could be. And that's the thing is, but the officer is trying to figure it into something that they're able to handle.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to take this over here and shift it so that it fits what their frame of reference.
Mm-hmm.
And when it doesn't, they have that cognitive dissonance, right? And so then once it starts going off the road, it's hard to get back on. And so once it goes, man, then things start happening. And then, you know, and like I said, when police officers make a mistake, it's not like burning a batch of fries, right? When police officers make mistakes, people get hurt.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's where I sit there and I go, we have an opportunity to get some stuff off the plate of policing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, incorporate a much more collaborative effort with the community. Again, bringing that community back together. And once we do that, you know, I said, then the police can focus on the law enforcement safety aspect.
Mm-hmm.
They can go back to training the decision making, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like with my company, I talk about, I provide human-centered, principle-based police tactical decision making. And that's my thing, is human-centered first, because you're dealing with humans,
Mm-hmm.
and now principles. We're,
Mm-hmm.
we're basing these on principles, some concepts, time-tested concepts that make things safer for all the people involved
Mm-hmm.
in a situation.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So
that's I gotta tell you, that's the best thing I've heard come out of all of this, from everything I've seen on the internet and articles. That is the most practical thing I've heard. And I have to tell you, that makes so much sense. I mean, my hat is off to you, like, and, literally and figuratively, and to be vulnerable as somebody who I struggled for many years with alcohol addiction, which led to drug addiction, which led to me ended up in a rehab facility in 2015. Yeah. And my life was not in a good spot. It was very, very much on the edge. And the people in that facility were trained professionals who had years of experience and degrees. And they took such good care of me that I literally tell people that was the best month of my life, even though it was one of the toughest months of my life. Those people were able to kindly and gently help me in my situation, even though it's not a interaction with a police officer. Yeah. That is a situation where a person like that, who understands drug, alcohol addiction, how to talk to somebody under the influence. I mean, as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, this makes all the sense in the world, what you just proposed.
Why don't we have, policing is a community effort, mm-hmm. right? Maintaining the safety of the community is a community effort.
Sure.
Police officers are community members. They forgot that. They need to get back to that. But they aren't the panacea, right? They can't handle everything. And so we need to have, for a long time, it's just been, oh, the police will handle it. And the police have said, all right. But we have to get back to where it's like, if it's an alcohol issue, let's get an alcohol counselor in there right now. You know, alcohol and drug counselor right now. Not like tomorrow or the next day or a referral for 2 weeks from now, but right now. Like they show up with the officer and we're walking in. And once the officer can figure out that everything is chill and there's no safety concerns like that for the counselor, mm-hmm. Now the counselor's up and you do your thing. And I'll just step back and I'm listening and I'm learning, so that if we do get to a point, you know, like you say, with years of experience, so that I learn from this person who has all this experience in talking with somebody under the influence, right? That you realize that as an officer, I realize that if I'm talking to you and you're heavily under the influence, you're not comprehending what I'm saying, right?
I've been that guy. Yeah.
Well, but the thing about it is other than in the real world, for police officers, the only time they're training that stuff is in scenario training. You cannot do a scenario training dealing with somebody under the influence of alcohol or narcotics with a sober role player and be accurate, right? So you're not getting a good picture. So now you put this officer, this 2-year officer, into a situation where they're finally dealing with a person under the influence who's not comprehending them, right? And they may have had a couple people up to that point, but they don't have a broad-based experience.
Sure.
And so now they're dealing with this person who just is not comprehending them. So what do they start to do? Well, they don't know how to shift their communication to match that and get through to this person simply, so they rely on what they know. All right, get your hands up, get on the ground, do this stuff, and start giving them all these things to do. And this person is just like, it just, and then wonder why it goes south, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, that's my thing is it's got to be much more of a collaborative effort. And it's a perfect opportunity for law enforcement to get that. You just have to admit, we can't handle everything you've given us. We need help, right?
And then, man, that's so great. And then I don't know how, again, obviously I'm a civilian. I have no idea about the inner workings of a police department, or I don't know how the finances get structured and all that, because you continue to see online these things that go, college could be paid for with this many billion and this many billion, and the police get this many billion. Is that legitimate? Do the police need more money, less money? Does the money need to be handled better? Where does that all play? How does that all play out?
I'm not a finance guy. I'm not an accountant. My point is, you invest in what you see as important, right? So if you don't see it as important, you're not going to invest in it. I can sit here all day and tell you can divert this many million from this, and you can come back at me and go, oh, but we need this for this and this for this, right? And I go, all right, fine. It's not that important to you. Or we can say, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. Yeah, we have all this counseling. We have all this stuff. We have this counseling over here, this entity here. We have that entity over there. We're going to combine them, right? Now we're going to combine them. And to me, what that does, like you say, okay, the police department, it's no longer the police department sitting over here off on its own down way over here on this street. And now mental health is over here. And, because that's usually the county anyway. But, the sheriff's office over here, and then this is over there. Now they're together. Because we all work together. We're all trying to accomplish the same goals.
That's a great.
And so, well, what's interesting about that is what kind of first hit me with that is I've gone some places to train where literally the police department and the sheriff's department are in the same building. Right? And I'm like, what does that do for the ability to communicate, right? And to see each other on the level? Like agencies oftentimes operate at odds, right? Like on the street level, they'll work together. But the further up you go, the more they butt heads, right? And my thing is, you put them both in the same thing. Now you have the police chief and the sheriff down the hall from each other, right? What does that do to that networking and that communication? Sure. And for the rest of the agency, that we expect you guys to work with each other. Now, let's put in mental health. Let's put in the other resources, educational resources. Let's put in there, low-income assistance resources. Let's put those all in the same general area. If we can't put them in the same big building because it's too much, let's put them in the same couple buildings nearby each other, right?
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, we're trying to do the same thing, right? We're trying to improve the quality of life in the community. We don't have different
agendas,
different goals and agendas. Yeah, we have the same goal, and so we just come at it from different angles. Which that's the best way you're going to solve a problem is multifaceted, right?
Sure.
It's like I sit there and say, I see the police officers say, it's not the police officer's fault, it's the public's fault. I go, well, first off, you're right, because you're members of the public. So yes, you're right. You're correct. You know what I mean? But secondly, it's everybody's in this, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
and it's like we say, it's I go, my thing is, you say in the investigations, there's three versions of the truth, right? There's yours, mine, and then what actually happened. So it's like we got to look at that. It's multifaceted. The problem is multifaceted. And yes, we if you're in it, you're part of the problem too, right? And so that's where you have to stop and go, okay, how am I contributing to this? Well, all right, I'm not saying you personally, right?
Right.
I'm saying collectively, how is law enforcement contributing to this? And that's where the open and honest, you have to look at yourself, comes in, right? And if you can't do it, then I'm sorry, we're never going to come to a resolution.
Sure.
And I'm just being realistic, right? And my thing is, that's fine. You can pick and choose to not look at yourself, but then stop wondering why the community doesn't see you either, right?
Sure. Well, going back even to the idea of personal development as a human being, if you're not willing to look inside yourself and ask yourself tough questions, you will never become better. It's just very logical. If you don't look inside, you'll never become better. So again, it's almost a denial. I'm not saying the police, I'm saying as humans, when we're not willing to look inside of ourselves or the groups that we associate with, and we place blame all over the other place, that just seems, as to me, to be a lack of maturity and a lack of accountability, which I think are two very main staples in becoming a better person, is being mature and holding yourself accountable.
Well, it's like I said, like I say, we throw blame around like confetti nowadays, man. We just, you get some blame. It's like Oprah Winfrey's, gift show. You get that. Right. You get that.
Oprah gives everybody blame.
Yeah, everybody gets blame except me.
Right, right, not me.
Right, but that's it. Is I go back to my cornerstones of law enforcement: character, integrity, and accountability.
I love that.
What's your character like? How do you, how do you perceive yourself? How do you present? What's your character? What do you believe in? Your integrity. How do you act when nobody's looking at you? What do you think about? How do you do things, right? When you walk past something in the store, like even clothes in a shopping, store, right? A retail store. I see clothes on the ground. I pick them up, put them on the hanger, and put them back up on the. I'm like, why do I need to just walk past that? I know I don't work here, but I'm here. That's on the ground. It's not supposed to be, right? Same
you could make it better.
In a supermarket, you go by and something's on the wrong shelf or something. Take it to the right shelf. If I go to the checkout and I'm like, I don't want to buy this, I don't put it there. I go back and put it away in the correct spot, right? Because I took it from that spot. Why am I now making somebody else have a job of having to clean up my mess, right? And it's just that, the accountability piece, as you say. Are you accountable to yourself, right? Do you hold yourself accountable? Or do you say, well, and I used to do this with new officers when I was training new officers. I'd sit, we riding around in my car, right? They're driving, I'm riding around. And I would watch their driving behavior. And, I'd watch them come up to a stop sign where there's nobody around, and I just wait and see what they did. And, they kind of roll through the stop sign and be like, why'd you do that? What? I said, you rolled through the stop sign, didn't stop. They go, oh, I stopped. And I say, first off, integrity. I don't need to tell you didn't stop if you stopped. I'm not going to do that. Why would I do that? That's messing with you. I'm lying. I'd be lying if I did that. I said, you didn't stop. And I'm like, how are you going to write somebody a ticket for blowing a stop sign if you do it? And they're like, huh? I said, that's my thing. I don't mind it. I'm like, you can roll through stop signs all you want. But understand, that's something you can't write people tickets for because you do it too. And my thing is, so you thought there was nobody at this stop sign, right? No other cars. But what about the person walking there? What about the car that's coming down the street that sees you just roll through the stop sign? What message are you sending to them?
Mm.
Right?
Right.
Because they know that they would get a ticket if they did that.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're doing it, and because you're not worried about getting a ticket. So there's a double standard.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that's when I would talk to her, I say, no, that's the whole thing. How do you see things at the base level, at the lowest, most simple level? I'm not talking about the person shooting everything up down there. I'm talking about how you conduct yourself at the lowest level,
Mm-hmm.
and especially when you think no one's watching.
Mm-hmm. And that's personal. That's just personal integrity. I mean, as my dad, we used to, when he was a traveling pastor, you know, we'd travel around,
Yeah.
and we would go to a hotel, and he would literally say, "We're going to leave this place better than we found it."
Yeah.
Not for any kudos or for any reason, just because that's a moral thing. It's his moral.
Yeah.
His moral foundation was built on doing the right thing and going above and beyond with integrity.
Yep.
Not for any accolades, because that's how he lived his life.
Yeah.
Like you said, that's how do you do things when people are not watching? Because that's how you're going to conduct yourself when people are watching. You know, you can't flip it on and off.
No, you're practicing, right? You're always practicing. Mm-hmm. And so, like, my thing always in my classes, my tactics class, I go, you play like you practice. And practice training isn't here. It's a wide spectrum. You get to pick it, right? Mm-hmm. You can operate anywhere within here. It's not just one way. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I watch teams, I watch operators, and I'm like, I know how you practice. So I know how you're going to play. And so we do scenarios, and I watch them go off the rails. And I'm like, cuz you're not ready for this. You're not prepared for any of this. Up here, well, my thing is this. I say you got to have a heart and mind connection in policing. Mm-hmm. You have to feel with your heart and think with your mind, right? But they got to be connected. Mm-hmm. And there's this disconnect in so many police officers that I don't feel. Well, okay, but you're not thinking either. Because they need to be matched up. They need to work together.
For sure.
And so, you know, about the moral stuff, you know, I try to talk to officers because my big thing about that is that they go, you know, like the whole thing of, you know, how come people have a problem with police officers shooting black people, but they don't have a problem with black on black crime? And then they always refer to Chicago, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I go, well, quite simply, because people don't expect gang members and criminals to have a moral compass, to have a strong value system, and to have accountability, and to follow the laws, policies, and ethics of the community. Okay?
Great.
But they expect that of the police. So that's why it's more shocking to them when a police officer does something like that than when a gang member shoots another gang member. So my point being, like I said, I hold police accountable, right? Because I hold myself accountable. But my point being is, I say to the people like that, I go, so what you're saying is that you expect police to have the same value system as a gang member or criminal. Mm. That's what you're expecting. Mm-hmm. Or that's what you're allowing. I won't allow that. Mm-hmm. I just simply won't allow that.
I love that. I'm probably going to clip that right there, because that's an amazing clip and explanation for that back and forth. Oh, well, we'll use this example over here. And, you know, I'm glad you hit that on the head. But I do have a question again, just continuing. What as community members, again, we are all part of a community worldwide. We're all one race. We are all a human community. But then we break down into sub-communities of Fort Collins or Dallas or wherever you're located. I wouldn't think we would find many people that say, I don't care about my community. There will be some. But obviously, 99% of us are going to say, I care about the people around me. I care about my family, my neighbors, the people I work with, the people I interact with, the people I go to church with. So at that point, we do all, as you've said many times, we all are trying to achieve the same goal. We all want to live in a safe and a happy environment. What role do we as civilians, I wouldn't say just not police, but as civilians. But how do we, what is our role in this moving forward? How do we play a role in helping bridge the gap? Because we can't just say, they got to come to us. I don't think that's accountability either, you know?
Yeah, true. So I hear people in the community saying, hey, the police need to be the ones to reach out. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'll talk to the police and tell them, right? And tell them they need to be the ones to reach out. They'll call you, all right? Just, what's your number?
Yeah.
But, you know, but what I say to the community, and I started doing this last year, and I did a couple of them down here in Denver. But my thing is doing like a community workshop. And I do the community workshop. I call it Understanding Police 101. And it's just a little 2-hour deal. And I say, okay, let's talk about policing. And I'm not there as a cheerleader for the police. I'm a cheerleader for law enforcement. Not for Denver police, not for anybody specific, but for the concept and principles of law enforcement. But my thing is, you know, I try to just talk about the realistic view of it. Where do police come from, right? We don't make them in a factory. They come from the community. So, yeah, so you remember the kid who was a C student or whatever and barely managed to make it through school or whatever? Yeah, he might become a police officer, okay? So just like the valedictorian might become a police officer. There's going to be varying degrees of abilities. And you have to understand that. And so my thing with the community, specifically, I kind of end up with here's some things to do, some action plans. Get to know your law enforcement. Get to know your local law enforcement, whether that's down to like the neighborhood policing, you know, the neighborhood police precinct in your area, or if it's the sheriff's office, go to the sheriff's office. If you see a deputy driving, wave, you know, with all your fingers and say, hey, all right, right? But you know what I'm saying? But it's like, but the thing about it is because, like I said, we've come down to 2 tribes. So the police are looking at the public like they don't like me, and the public's looking at the police like they don't like me. And so what we have to do is we just have to break that. And that can be simply waving and saying hello, right? And, you know, that catches people. Oh, I thought you were going to be different, right? I spent my career, 20 years in policing, being different from the stereotypical police officer. And it served me very well. And the thing about it is you got to be unpredictable in that. So if somebody thinks like I drive around and I see police officers and I hear it from other officers I've worked with who have retired, and they're like, man, these officers won't look at you. He goes, I'll try to smile and wave and they don't want to wave. Yeah, it might not happen the first times, right? But I don't care. That's what I do, right? That's what I do. If you choose to wave back, great. If you choose to like think, oh, he's trying to bait me in, well, that's on you, right? But it's just that from the public side of it, go meet your police officers. Go tell them, I believe in you, but I'm going to keep an eye on you, right? Right? And I'm going to hold you accountable. And likewise, I expect you to hold me accountable. We start that relationship coming back, right? We start telling the sheepdogs, please come back down to the flock. We want you here. We want to know you, right? And that's how you start to build it. It's just simple little things, right? People want to do, oh, we got to organize a barbecue and we got to organize this, and it becomes too much work, right? You go, oh, God, it's too much. Oh, we did that once 7 years ago. Well, what have you done since? Nothing. Okay. Have you said hi to anybody? Well, no. All right, but that's the simple things, right? And you encourage the officers to get out of their cars now. Now an officer feels comfortable getting out of their car. Oh, okay, the people aren't pissed at me. Now we start a conversation. Now you got this officer walking through your neighborhood going, hey, what's up? Playing basketball with the kids and doing all this stuff. And right? I mean, look at the Basketball Cop Foundation down in Jacksonville. You know, the guy went out and got called on noise complaint, kids playing basketball in the street. He started playing with them. He ends up bringing back Shaquille O'Neal, who's a reserve deputy in Florida, brings him back to play basketball with these kids. You know what I mean?
That's impactful.
That's what you're sending the message to the kids is to say, you're all right. you're not doing anything wrong. Keep doing what you're doing. And you're sending a message to that person who called saying, they're not doing anything wrong. They're doing right. This is good, and I'm going to support this, so you might want to support this. That's how we start drawing those connections, by being unpredictable with each other like that. I'm not talking about negatively unpredictable. I'm talking about positively unpredictable.
Right.
But the community can do that too.
Yeah.
And it's little simple things to let the police officers know, I mean you no harm. Because so many agencies are doing such the wrong thing of training their officers to be hyper vigilant. That, you know, oh, look at these officers got attacked over here. Yeah, they did. And put it back on police. 99.9% of the population is not going to attack you. So don't treat the other 99.9% because of that 0.01%.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Of course. And it works both ways too, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So we get caught from our own perspective.
Sure. It's us not being willing to listen, understand, and take actionable steps. Like you said, waving is the most practical, actionable step you could possibly take to build a relationship. Hi, how are you? Thanks for what you do.
Not hard.
Mind-blowing how simple human connection can be, but we have to lower our guards, and like you said, the hypervigilance on both sides of the cops are shooting people every time I leave the house. And are they really, or is that how you feel because you haven't educated yourself enough or haven't listened enough? Which I understand. I'm very empathetic to people's feelings, but also, as my father used to tell me, your feelings lie. Your feelings are simply that, a feeling that most of the time is not based on logic unless you've thought all the way through it and come to a conclusion, which then it's not just a random feeling anymore. No. Now it's something you can know why I feel this. Going back to the why, you know.
That's one of the things that I think that is really lacking anymore is that logic, critical thinking, reasoning through something. We do. Feelings, I like to say now, I said, maybe now we need to go with feelings for a moment, because what we're trying to do is throw statistics around at each other. And they don't bear out. They don't bear out.
Not helpful.
But they don't help either side.
Right.
And so my thing is, stop. We need to listen to feelings for a minute. Because if I listen to your feelings, then you start to lower your hypervigilance. Because you're like, okay, I'm being heard. I'm being listened to. I got this. So then then what you're going to start to do, if I listen to you, you'll start to accept that, like you said, maybe my feelings weren't, they kind of lied to me. They said things were really dangerous and they really aren't. And that, but I think we have to stop and go, all right, I'm here. Let me hear your feelings. That as kind of hurtful as they might be to me, let me hear them. All right.
Right. I was starting, I think a lot of people were starting to try to have that mindset when everything went down at first with George Floyd, and a lot of us went, man, I got to listen better. And again, and people kept saying, you have to have those uncomfortable conversations. And it is a little uncomfortable when people go, look at the history of people that look like you. And I'm like, my God, that's uncomfortable to be like, there was really bad people that did really bad things and they got my same skin color, right? But I had to become uncomfortable and listen. And then then you're less defensive and you go, wow, okay, I get it now. It's not against me. It's not an attack on me. It's simply just, hey, listen to what I have to say. I'm frustrated. Hear me out. When you listen to people, you diffuse a lot of situations.
Yeah. It's that mere acknowledgement, right? You don't have to solve anything. It's just the acknowledgement that I listened to you and go, that was bad. And the person goes, cool, that's all I needed. I know you can't fix it. But I needed somebody to listen to me and hear me. Right?
Right. I am hopeful that people will be able to, how do you say it politically correctly? I'm hopeful that people will be willing, again, to listen and and take, as I keep telling people, we as people right now, everybody, the whole world, we need to take a step back and we need to take a deep breath. And I think even maybe you would say, I don't know a lot about tactical training, but I have friends that are in the military that have talked to me, helping me how to shoot my pistol. And they talk about the inhale, taking a deep breath. And when you take a deep breath, things become clearer. And I think in a practical standpoint, when you take a deep breath, you're more willing to listen. You got to fill up the lungs. You feel, it's an instant calm. And then we can talk. Then we can go back and forth. We can disagree. Maybe I don't like the way somebody said something, but it's less hostile once we breathe and realize you're looking at a person. We're all looking at people. We're not looking at cop and not cop. We're looking at people. Remove police for a second. Let's try to hear and understand people as human beings, just as simple human beings. I know it sounds hippie-ish to say, but simply listening and loving your fellow man will change the world. That will change the world.
When I teach tactics, that's one of the big things I say. I say, when in doubt, breathe. When you're not sure what to do, take a breath. Right? And I say it. And I got that really from, my wife teaching yoga and all stuff, and how yoga is really all about breath. It's just about breath. The movement stuff, that's icing on the cake. But yoga is about understanding your breath and how it affects you and how to control it. And so, I've developed that into my tactical training. I say, when in doubt, breathe. You usually always have an opportunity to stop and take a breath. Because when you breathe, you get the oxygen flowing through your body, goes in your blood goes into your brain, helps with the neural synapses, helps you with your thought process, right? When you don't breathe, we die. We can say that euphemistically, and we can say that literally. When you don't breathe, you die. When you breathe, you live. And that's the whole thing, is that we have to stop, step back, and just take a breath, right? Because when you're breathing in and breathing out and breathing in, you're not talking. You're listening. You're listening, right? You're paying attention to your surroundings. And it's just, and that's what we need to do. If we're going to move past this, I say, this is great that we've got the protests going and we've got the hashtag this, that, and the other thing, but that'll only carry us for so far. And as I've put out on my channel, on Instagram, I say, okay, my fellow protesters, we've got their attention. Now what? Right? Because they're listening. But
the world is listening.
You can't keep yelling, right? Once they're listening, and I say it in my tactics classes, don't keep yelling at a person to be compliant, because they're going to do something wrong because you're yelling at them. As soon as they listen to you, go down to a conversational tone. Speak to them, right? You can't keep yelling. It becomes white noise after a bit. And that person just goes, it's not working for me, right?
Man, I think you should write a book.
I'm
serious.
I had about 30 pages done in a book, and the hard drive I had it on collapsed. So I got to try to get that off, or I got to start over again. But it's funny because I keep going, oh, well, I can just start over again because now I got all these new thoughts. It's like a squirrel. It's like a squirrel in here, man. It's just all over the place, right? But no, and that's the thing is to me, it's so simple. It's so simple, but it takes a lot of what I've learned, really mostly through my wife, is to just kind of go, all right, I don't know. I need to understand. And how can I get my body into the spot where it's now receptive, right? So that my mind's not going, and I can kind of shut it down a little bit. I can collect my body, control my emotions, and everything like that, so that I can now be receptive and take the information in. It's real simple to process the information and then to do something about it, but it's getting your body to that point to allow that information in. That's the tough part. That's where the work exists.
And I think It's going to take a desire on both ends, and I think that's key. Is it's going to take a desire. It takes a willingness to want to become better, and unfortunately, we can't make everybody desire to become better.
Nope.
I mean, you've got plenty of experience with humans. You can't force people to want to become better, and as police or as human beings, you can't control people, and you can't force them to become better. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't stop saying what's right. You know, and I think there's a lot of people right now that are frustrated. Because they're going, they're not listening. They're not understanding. And I'm going, I get it. Breathe and keep doing what's right. That's all we can do. We can't change the world by going out and, like you said, yelling at everybody. But we also shouldn't let it get us down and let it divert us from the path of doing what's right. Doing what's right has always been right, and it always will be.
It's a constant.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an absolute constant. It should just be the constant, right?
Maybe you should put out a book of motivational quotes too.
I may do that. I may do that. I write the.
Well, Marc, do you have anything else?
I have a list.
You're a wise mind. Thanks for sharing your time. But if there's any parting words you could leave some people with.
Hey, my thing is this. I know it's frustrating. And I know it hurts. Trust me, I sit here daily going, I had to take a few days off from all social media and everything for a little while right after the Floyd killing, because I was just like, it was heavy, man. I was like, I get it. The community's going, what's wrong? I get it. And the law enforcement's going, what's the problem? I was as frustrated as everybody. I had to take a couple days off and just go unplug.
Good for you.
But understand, man, what I want everybody to understand is it's about the community. It's about our communities. And I say it like I said to the police. I say, you're worth it. The community's worth it. We are worth it. It's worth the effort. And this is not disposable. We can't just toss this one away and all of a sudden a brand new one, all wonderful appears. This is what we got, right?
Right.
And so it's like we've got to preserve it. We've got to reconstruct it. We've got to remodel it, whatever that looks like. But we can't just go in the trash and go get another one, right? Walmart's got a lot of stuff, but they don't have a new community. And so this is what we get. And then just leaving it to everybody is that, remember that it's worth it.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time, Marc. You're an incredible leader. I have a lot of respect for you just from my father and your relationship with him and just watching you growing up as somebody that me and my brother really looked up to as a police officer in our community. So parting words for me is thank you. Really.
Oh, appreciate it. You're welcome.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you've done. I know it's a sacrifice, man. And again, I don't want it to get too political, but we appreciate what you've done and what you're doing. You're making a difference.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, that's my thing is it's pay it forward, right? 100%. My actions, the way I am, the way I present for the community, I don't usually get to see the results of that. Right? But it's in people, like you, as you grow up, and now you're a grown up, you're an adult, and you say, hey, this little bit you influenced me in. Okay, fantastic, great. I'm glad that helped you to be in the spot where you are today. Right? It's constant. We just got to keep working at it.
Constant. Well, thanks for your time, brother. You're an absolute blessing.
All right, Kyle. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Let's talk soon, okay?
All right, definitely.
All right. Take care of yourself, man.
All right.
Adios.